recording now, so just so that everybody knows. All right, thank you so much, Annika. So yes, please tell us what you're up to these days.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm currently an undergraduate student at the George Washington University. It's in DC, Washington, DC. I'm majoring in biophysics. So that's kind of an interdisciplinary study where I'm basically taking biology classes, physics classes, and some chemistry classes. And you kind of work to see how all these sciences come together, and you just try to explain things. So I'm interested in going into research and hopefully with some medical applications. Recently, I took a molecular biology class, so I think working on like that level of things, like the microscopic level, would be really interesting. And I do think genetics is really interesting as well. I graduated from Alumna High School in 2018. That's a picture from my graduation with my two friends, Sophia and Lexi. I'm the one on the left. And I'm a HOSA alum. So I was in HOSA all 4 years when I was at Alumna. And I thought it was a really great opportunity just to like learn more about careers, and I made some good friends too. Having trouble. Okay. All right, so a little bit more about George Washington University, or GW as the students call it. It is in Washington, DC, which is a really cool location in my opinion. And it's a private school, and it's focused on like that well-rounded liberal arts education, but it's also a research institution. So a lot of research goes on here, and it's like a mid-sized school, about 12,000 undergraduates. And there's also a law school, a medical school, and there's part of the medical school, it's like a medical and health professional school. They also have a nursing school. So if anyone's interested in that, I've heard good things. And so for the undergraduates, the options are pretty much like the science and engineering school, which is just computer science and all the engineering majors are in there. There's like the biggest school, which is the Columbia School of Arts and Sciences. So that's where I am with my physics major. And it encompasses pretty much like everything from like poli-sci to chemistry and all sorts of disciplines. And then there's the Elliott School, which is the School of International Affairs. So I know that's like one of the things that GW is known for, and I do have a lot of friends who are in that school. So I think that's the second biggest school. There's also the Milken School of Public Health, which is a really interesting major where you're learning a lot about like the society aspect of healthcare. And then there's also the Corcoran School of Performing Arts. So Washington, DC, as I said before, I think is kind of my favorite part about going to GW. It's like location, location, location. And that's one of the things I thought a lot about when I was applying to school. So Washington, DC has lots of cool stuff. Obviously, it's the capital of the US. So a lot of government stuff goes on here, and that includes like government labs and stuff like that. So I have a few pictures. Here in the bottom left is like the National Christmas tree, and you can see the Washington Monument in the back. Here in the top, I went to like a Planned Parenthood protest. I volunteered for that, and we were in the Senate's office buildings, which was really cool. And that was like government in action and like participation. Here in the bottom middle, that's my friend, and that's when we used to do yoga at the Kennedy Center, which is like the huge center for performing arts in DC. And it was a free yoga class every Saturday, but alas, COVID times. And then on the bottom right here is the Women's March, which was the one in 2019, which I went to, and that's a picture I took. And it was just a huge number of people, and it was really cool to like go outside and be part of something like bigger than yourself. So those are like just a few of the reasons I really like DC. So my college experience so far, a few things I think to highlight are like extracurriculars you can do are so important, because college isn't just about, you know, taking classes. It's also about becoming like an adult. So on the left here is a trip I went on with my school. The name of the organization I went with was Alt Breaks, or Alternative Breaks. So the idea is like on winter break or spring break or fall break, instead of going and doing something like fun just for pleasure, you go and volunteer and like engage in service trips. So this was a trip to New Orleans, and we worked with Habitat for Humanity and this other nonprofit that recycled paint, and we like worked for like 5 days, and we took a bus ride there and a bus ride back, and it was really cool as a bonding experience and just a way to like engage in active citizenship again. On the top right, that's a picture of me and my friend Sophia again. But it was when I was volunteering at GW Hospital, which is right next to campus. And that was a really cool experience because I got to see the inside of the hospital and how it works. I worked in the emergency department, restocking the carts and all like the little rings with like the medical gear that they needed. So like a bunch of gauze and stuff like that. And it felt really good to like volunteer and give back to the community that I was now a part of. And then here, the picture in the bottom right is me on the GW Quiz Bowl team, which is like a trivia competition. And we went to a tournament at Georgetown. So that was us after the tournament, and it was a lot of fun. That's like one of the things I do on campus. That's just for fun. It doesn't really build my resume, right? That's another thing I wanted to mention about Washington, D.C. is that there's a lot of other schools. So there's Georgetown, which I think is the closest one to GW. And then there's also American University and Catholic University and Howard University. And then there's some smaller schools too. So that's all I had prepared. If anyone has any questions about my experience or GW in general, I would be happy to answer those.
What did you say was the name of the service kind of group that you were in?
It was called Alt Breaks, but it's short for alternative breaks. I think it's actually like a pretty common thing for colleges to have, so it's not GW specific.
How challenging did you find getting into college, specifically?
So the application process took me like a lot of time just because I was really nervous about my like application essays. Getting like the rest of the stuff together, I think, was not the hard part. The hard part was like writing about myself in a compelling way that made people want me to be part of their school. But I got through it, and GW was actually like one of the first schools that got back to me, and I was like pretty excited. And I was like, okay, this is good. This like bodes well for me. And then, as I like got my other like offers and like rejections, I was like, okay, so GW seems like the best option for me, and I just decided to go. I didn't ever like tour GW. I was really just relying on all the information I could like find online and from like other people I knew. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. I'm a junior now, so I'm like starting to think about it. So you really have to like weigh your options, and it seems very overwhelming right now, but that's nice to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would have changed had I gone through it again is like I would have looked at the department I was applying to more closely, because like going into college I knew what I wanted to major in. So if I had like looked at the department specifically, I think that would be like something I would have done differently, which of course is like a unique situation because I already knew what I wanted to major in. But yeah, and if you do know anyone who goes there, definitely reach out because they can tell you like the inside scoop, and that's always good to know.
Yeah, I would love to just kind of echo what Annika mentioned earlier about when you're looking at schools, location is so important. You know, really knowing where you want to be is important because the schools, a lot of the schools have a lot of the same kinds of extracurriculars and things like that. But being somewhere you really want to be is important. And it makes a big difference because if you're not happy in your living situation, in your personal space, that has a big impact on how successful you can be academically. So choosing a place that's somewhere you actually want to live is going to be important for you. So the other thing I'd like to mention too, with the medium-sized schools such as GW, I think you're an advantage to going to a school like that is that you probably have a lot more access to like professors and opportunities than you do at some of the really large schools. So like here in California, we have a lot of great state colleges and universities, but many of them are quite large. And so going to some of the, the big kind of popular big name schools can be a challenge because you're much more of a number at places like that. Whereas some of the smaller privates, you might have better access to more opportunities, such as Annika was mentioning, like being able to volunteer at the hospital situation. Or back in September, when we heard from Lexus, actually came and spoke to us about her school. Um, Being able to be part of the campus medic team was one advantage of the school she was at. So some of those smaller privates can offer those opportunities, and a lot of times those smaller privates too, I mean, people think, they see the initial price tag and they think, well, that's too expensive, but a lot of them have a lot of financial aid, and so in many cases they end up being very similar as far as what you're going to end up paying yourself as some of the kind of like public schools and stuff. So just food for thought.
Yeah, I definitely had that experience with like the pricing of the schools. Like it turned out like all the schools that I wanted to go to would have cost about the same amount of money, and that included the California public schools.
Yeah, because they're all competing for the same students. they can't they can't charge way more. They won't have students. Yeah. Other questions for Annika? Annika, have you had the experience where you've changed your mind about what you wanted to do much while you were there? You kind of had a pretty singular focus going in, and has that changed at all based on experiences in classes or anything like that?
Yeah, I think I definitely had to kind of work around that because I did go in and I did plan on like taking all the classes for like the pre-med track, and most of those classes are in my major. So it's kind of like keeping that option open, but I'm realizing more and more now that I probably will not apply to medical school.
And I know you were talking previously about wanting to go into medical research, and we've been hearing a lot about that in the news, of course, with all the work on COVID vaccines and things like that. What area of research do you find most interesting, and where do you see yourself going?
It's hard to say at this point. I think I would like to stick with physics and do a grad program that's physics related, and being able to apply physics to medicine seems like something that would really interest me. And there is such a thing as medical physics, so that would be really neat.
So what does that look like? Give us a little more.
Okay, so far, like what I know about it, like the most popular thing to do is like having to do with like radiation and imaging. So studying like radiation therapy, and then studying like MRI machines and stuff like that, and how that works and how you can apply it to patient care. Yeah, I don't know too much about it. But yeah, that my major is biophysics, so just applying physics to biological systems is really interesting too. Last semester I took a class that was biophysics macroscopic, and it was all about like taking like systems, biology systems, and breaking them down basically into equations and solving for points of equilibrium and non-equilibrium. So you're seeing like when things will stay the same and when things will change. And then this semester I'm in the same class, biophysics, but microscopic, and it's much more about the specifics of like cell biology and how you can break that down again into just like numbers and equations.
Very cool. I will, next time I talk to Mr. Brazil, I will share with him that you're doing such awesome stuff. I'm sure he'll be excited.
Yeah.
Here's a question I've heard our students ask other guests. So as an alumni of Petaluma High, what were some of your favorite classes from Petaluma High that you think were most helpful to you in college?
Definitely honors chemistry with Ms. Boys. I thought that was instrumental to helping me along my first semester of chemistry. I felt very sure about myself and I was like, this all seems familiar and I can get through it. And it was just a total boost of confidence. And then especially for me being a physics major, calculus was super important. So kudos to Mr. McHugh. But yeah, I mean, I'd say all your classes are important just because like you have to find out what you like and like how your mind works because everyone's gonna like work a bit differently and you have to know how to harness that and like what's your best way to learn because that's what's really gonna help you be successful in school is knowing yourself.
Super. Any other questions for Annika?
Did you find it like relatively, before COVID, like difficult or kind of easy to get in like your volunteering at the hospital?
Yeah, so it was an application where I needed to do a personal statement and I needed 2 letters of rec and then I did a phone interview and then I was allowed to start working there. So it seemed like kind of like a standard application process for like what you might do for like a job, but they don't pay me.
And if I remember correctly, I think I was one of your letters of rec.
You
so
were.
all of you HOSA folks, I'm always happy to do those letters. So don't hesitate to ask me to do so. I'm always happy to do it. Any other questions for Annika? Wonderful. Annika, if questions arise and folks want to reach out to you, is it all right if I share your contact information with HOSA members?
Yeah, perfect. I'm usually easier to reach by text. So
Okay.
if you email me, it might take a few days.
Okay. I have your cell number. Do you want to drop your email address into the chat so we have your current one?
Yeah.
That would be perfect. And then again, I would love to just say thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a lot of fun talking to you, and it's I'm sure there will be others who I know some of our other members wanted to be able to hear what was going on. So we'll make sure we post the video where people can find it. So thanks again for joining us today.
You're totally welcome. I had fun too.